Next step is to take these stickers off because we have to use those holes to unscrew the cap. Top and bottom. Not going to focus. There you go. Take a knife, scrape them off. All right, this step is bleeding the nitrogen. So we got hex key right there, size 2.5. Loosen this guy. Take that out. If for some reason this gets mangled, don't worry. There's extras that come with the rebuild kit. Bah. There you are. And then here's the pick. There's a little plug in there. This could be a little bitch. Pry that guy out. All right, little guy's finally coming out. There. Kind of fucked it up, as you can see. Don't care. Don't worry if you fuck this up either on those threads. Here is the one from the last one I just did. You're going to replace this entire thing in the rebuild kit also. Not just replacing these seals, but the entire assembly. All right, now is when you definitely want to have hearing protection and eye protection on, because we're going to release the nitrogen out of here. In the instructions, it seems like they want you to do it upright so that you can see the piston drop. I'm just going to do it here to show you how to do it really quick, and then I'll rearrange the camera to show the piston drop as I do the rest of it. In the instructions, they say to use a air chuck, double-sided air chuck, along with this adapter that comes in the rebuild kit. But I don't have one of those, so I didn't use that. So I just used the pick, like they say, as an alternative. Yep, see, there's still some air left in there. If all the air is out, you'll be able to push this all the way to the bottom. There we go. So when you get the toolkit from Raceworks, these are the tools they send you. These here are probably for the upright inverted assembly because I didn't actually use it. For this, we're going to use these guys. This is spacer, and this is the wrench. It works both on here, it just fits in like that, and up here, once I get that guy off. So the next step is open this guy. If you haven't bled all the air out, this will be exciting. There's the floating piston, that guy right there. So you see now this just slides over like that. Same procedure. Oh yeah, that ain't supposed to be in there. So the next step that they say is to remove the C-clip, which is buried in there or on the outside. Clean this out so we can see it. There's the C-clip right there. There's the end of it. So we got to pop that guy out. In the instructions, they say just pop it out, but there's a trick to get this thing out easier. Let me show you. So what you want to do is put it in your vise like this. Make sure the bottom is seating against the vise arm because you're going to hammer this thing a little bit. Find you a punch that fits in between the threading and the body. You're going to replace this entire thing. Don't worry about fucking it up. We're going to tap that down around the outside a little bit to release the pressure on that C-clip. Then take your pick and fish it out. There you go. I found the easiest way is to try and go in from the underside of the bottom, and then once you get it under like that, just keep running it around. Don't try and pick it out, or you'll bend your pick like I did. The next step that they have 2D in the instructions they send you is to take pliers and pry this out, this entire seal here. You can mangle this as much as you want, because again, you're going to replace both the metal and this seal and the spring. You don't want to pry against this guy, against the rod. That'll damage it, and then this will never seal right ever again. I did not have much luck with the plier method, so I'm going to show you what I did. Take our old cat, clean it out. Now this is part of the instructions to thread this guy back on by hand. And that is what we're going to do. We're going to use the threads to help us pull it out. And you just want to thread this guy on just 1 or 2, as little as you can, to leave a gap there, because we're going to shove a screwdriver in there and try and enlarge that gap, and then advance the threading, enlarge the gap, and so forth. All right, screwdriver's in, and just twist. And we'll go around and do the same thing. And it's in, and twist. And just keep working your way around and work it up. And at this point, you may need to switch methods. There we go. So you got the first ring exposed right there. Once you're at that point, I do this by hand. Okay, that was a lot easier than last time, but you should just pop this up. There we go. Look at how dirty that dude is. So now we gotta dump all the shock oil out that's in here. For reference, the shock fluid is sitting at about that level right there, whereas it should be right about there. All right, and that will probably get a little more once we get the rod out, which it is now time for. There's going to be a little bit, excuse me, there's going to be a little bit more oil sitting right on top of the valving. Time to make a mess. This will have to come out with a little bit of a pop sometimes. Just wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. Wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. There we go. Set this guy aside in a clean place. So now the instructions talk about removing the floating piston, which is, you can't see. That right there is a floating piston. So they say take some long plastic something or other. I went to Lowe's and got a 2-foot piece of HDPE 1 inch, fits in perfectly. Again, you're gonna replace that whole thing, so fuck it. Now we got to clean that out. Make sure there's no sand or anything in there. Compressed air and shop towels work pretty well for this. I'm going to do this kind of gun cleaning style. Get you a few paper towels. You guys see where I'm going with this? Twisty, twisty. Make sure not to touch the sides. And pop it out. And retrieve it. I'm good with that. All right, reassembly. At this point, I'd recommend changing your gloves because you don't want to get any kind of dirt or grime inside anything if you can help it. Now, Raceworks recommended this Motul synthetic fork oil, light medium SAE 7.5 weight. So that is what we're going to use. This is, what size is this? That is 32 ounce, and this will hopefully be enough to do both of the rears. Use about half on the first, and even fucked it up a little bit, so hopefully this is enough. So when you get the kit from Raceworks, this is what it looks like. I ordered 2 kits to rebuild the rears this one time, then have kits to rebuild another next time. This is for one pair, so I'll be working with this. I'll keep these guys in here as long as I can to keep the plastic, keeping the dust off them. So we're going to start with the floating piston on the bottom, and that is this guy with the little white line. You can't see. I'll show you. This is your floating piston. So we want to put some oil on that just to seal it. If you don't do that, as I was told by a professional, you can get some kind of nicking if it goes in dry, and that'll give you blow-by, because this is what separates the nitrogen that's down here in the bottom from the shock oil that's up here. And just press that up in there. Now we're going to use this guy. Then you have to hold this in there if it doesn't stay. So here's the old floating piston. The idea is that this sits right there like that, upside down, so you can knock this thing up inside of the body. This is also going to help us set the height of the floating piston when we're filling with fork oil. The fork goes in one more time. Let's inspect that seal, make sure there's nothing on it like there is. Give it a quick wipey. It's also a really good idea to clean these bottom threads up inside and out extensively before you do this. And just take a dead blow hammer, tappy. Once it gets in, it'll just kind of pop down in there. There she blows. So now, seat the spacer right inside that groove there, and rest that on the arm of your vise. Slide it on down until it's sitting flush like that, and clamp her in there. Grab your rod again. I'm going to go outside and hit this with some compressed air just to make sure it's clean, get all the old shock oil off. All right, got the rod clean. And now put a little bit of oil in there. What do I start at? Starting at 500 mils. I'll put about 100 mils in there, I'd say. All right. And we're just trying to get enough in there to submerge this, basically. Maybe a little bit more. For now, we're going to fill this thing up eventually, so don't worry if you do a little bit more, a little bit less. It doesn't actually matter, because then we're going to work this guy and get all the air out eventually anyway. And if you guys are watching and wondering, why don't you have this thing clamped in the vise yet? It's because I'm dumb, that's why. But remember, you don't want to have that spacer that it's sitting on. You don't want to move that if you can help it. Or you're going to want to reset it and make sure it's seating right. Okay. You hear that? All right, now we are on bottom. Fill her up. So we got a filter right about there, pistons right about there. Just make sure you're clean. I've already slid the new upper seal and stage on here. This is kind of just like a dust guard for when I'm working this thing up and down. It's one more thing to catch dust before it falls down in there, just in case anything came off my gloves. What I would recommend doing now is taking that nut that was on the top here and throw it on upside down. We're going to use this as a little bit of a handle, so our fingers don't get super tired working this thing up and down. So now, basically, we just want to push with as little force as it takes to work the valve through the oil. Now your piston will start pushing down when you do this. It'll bottom out eventually, somewhere. See, I can push down and it kind of bounces back up, so it's pushing, the pressure that's in there is still pushing back on it. So now what we want to do, you can put more fluid in there if you want. Actually, I'm going to do that, because now we want to work the valve up and down, like seriously 20-30 times. This will take a minute, just be patient. We're trying to get all the air bubbles through the valving and out. And you're going to hear some trickling noises when you do this. Basically, you want to keep working this up and down until you don't hear any sounds at all, completely silent. Let's put a little more oil in here. And if you're going to add more oil like this, I would not fill it up more than maybe 2 inches from the top or so, because when we're working this valve up and down, if you pull too hard going up, you're going to suction that floating piston and pull the piston up, and that's a bit too fast. So if you do that and you filled it up all the way, you're going to spill fork oil everywhere. So the goal when we're pulling it up is to do it slow enough that that floating piston doesn't move. And the way you can tell it's not moving is while you're pulling up, your fluid level should not be coming up also. If it is, just slow down a little bit. But you'll see just how slow. And then when you're pulling this thing up, there is that little plastic piece sitting on top of the valving. I like to stop right when I see that thing, but before it comes out of the fork oil. You might see some little air bubbles pop out while you're doing this. That's good. So now that we're getting to the top here, you can see there's that little plastic piece, I don't know what it's called, but it's still in the oil, going down. Let's see if we can catch any air bubbles coming up here. Oh, there's some tiny ones. But just, if you only do this 5 or 6 times and you think you've got it, keep going, because you don't want to come back in here once you get this thing back on the car and all of a sudden you got a bouncy ride. Because one of the ways you get bounce out of these things is if air gets into the fork oil chamber, causes cavitation, and you get mostly a lot of low speed bounces coming up to traffic lights, stop signs, that kind of thing. And a little bubble coming out there. See on that side? You can do a few strokes and nothing will happen, then all of a sudden one of those comes out. That's why you just want to keep doing it. Also, if you're sweating as much as I am, make sure you don't drip in there. Also, if you haven't already, it's very helpful to have the damper set to wide open, the lowest setting for this. Otherwise, you'll be having to move this rod significantly slow. It'll be much more of a pain to do. Oh yeah, there's a good bunch of bubbles. See that right there? We don't want that. I like to go at least a good 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 without hearing any sounds, seeing any air bubbles before I consider it done and bled. Oh, nope, there's a big bubble. Look at that. Towards the end, I'll start increasing the rate at which I push down, just to try and force any air that's in there to come out the top. If you notice a bunch of tiny bubbles that are just sitting kind of in the top of the shock fluid column, then don't pull the valving up to the top to run into them. You want to just keep going just right below them, because they'll eventually work their way to the top, and then you can take a pick and just pop them. And these will be very tiny, like a 0.5 millimeter in diameter bubbles. But if you're not seeing big bubbles and still hearing tiny little popping and flow noises like that, then you've got a micro bubble in there somewhere, and you really want to work that out. So I pulled off this cap just to show you how to get it on there, the upper seal. Also want to get, this is that little plastic piece I was talking about that was sitting on top of the valving with these little grooves facing down. I just cleaned off a pick very well and fished it out because this thing will help you get the last little bit of air out when we're putting this seal back in. And we want this thing to be kind of sitting up against the bottom of this top seal here. Just like that. With a little bit of oil on the back of this plastic piece, it'll just stay there. So put that guy on here. It might fall down, we may have to fish it out again. It's okay. And then put the top seal down and just stick that bottom piece up there. Now, getting it down onto the rod can be a little bit tricky. And what I've found easiest is to take that top nut again and turn it on upside down just a little bit. And we're going to take these straight vice grips and just use that like so, oops, to pry that down over the smooth part of the rod. And so now I'm going to fish out that little plastic stage there again. Don't poke yourself in the eye. If you go to fish this out also, remember, don't let it come above the top of the oil, otherwise there's a good chance you're going to pull air down in there and have to do this whole bleeding process over again. Okay, I can see it. There we go. Stay there. Unlike that. Damn it. Okay. So now, want to get a little bit of oil on your glove, lube up those seals, and also make sure there's no specks of anything on them. Also want to make sure that little plastic piece is in there because that'll help us disperse any last air bubbles. I'm going to pull this stage up as far as it'll go before it gets off the smooth part of the rod onto the threads. And then when you pour this oil in here, remember, you don't want it to just pour right in there and possibly make a hydraulic jump and possibly cause bubbles. You want this to kind of float or slide down the side of the strut body. Just take your time with it. We're going to fill this all the way to the top and just get a tiny little drop overflowing just to be safe. This is also your last chance to check for air bubbles. If you got a light like this that can shine a reflection, it makes these tiny little air bubbles very, very easy to see. I got one floating around here, I can show you what I mean. You see that little speck that's shining? Right. There it is. We gotta pop that guy. So, I found it very helpful to take a pick, dry the end of the pick, and pop it. I got a few more in there that you didn't see. Okay. Fill this the rest of the way. There we go. All the way to the top. Get this guy as level as you can, straight up and down. It's not a huge deal because of that little plastic piece. And now, it might be helpful to thread this guy back on just to have a handle to hold on to, because we're going to slide this upper seal and stage down now. There we go. And this is going to make a mess. You're going to pour a bunch of fluid out. So if you don't have an area where you can drip fluid all over the place, just wrap a towel around the bottom like this to catch it. Here we go. Very slowly, you want to let the oil work its way out of those grooves. There we go. Oop. And now watch, when I push this down, the whole rod will move with it. Just like that. And now thread this guy off. Check your gloves, make sure they're clean, because we want to press this top stage down just a little bit to make room for the C-clip to fit back in its groove. So it's time to put the C-clip back in. What I recommend doing with this is taking a grinder to kind of slope the edges a little bit to make it easier to take out next time. The edges of the C-clip are straight, and that's part of the reason why I have an issue fiddling the pick around it to get it out, and that causes you to mangle the strut body a little bit. So you see all I did there was make some grooves on the outside like that, so I can fit a pick under there more easily and pry it out later. There we go. Make sure there's no dirt or anything on the threads in here. Thread that down. Use your adapter. Hand tight. And then quick little ugga dugga from the impact. I have it set on 3. Just like that. Okay, so now we come back around to this side, and we're going to put that nitrogen chamber seal on. You're going to want to make sure again that you clean this off. You see I've got a little bit of paint from my vise, so let's get that off. I want to clean up the inner threading here. Get all the dirt out you can, because you're going to be sliding those O-rings past it. You don't want them to pick anything up as they're going in. Fish this last guy out. Note, see I just got my hand all dirty? Don't be touching that. Note that there is not, you can't really see it. There's no seal in the bottom hole here. So we'll have to put that in afterwards. But that is where you get the nitrogen filled up, and I'm going to have a shop do that once I get this all put back together. Where is some clean oil? There it is. Parks is spilling it. It's readily available. All right. Press that in there. And that first O-ring is now seated in the threads. All right. You're going to want to tighten these with the impact, but I like to get everything hand threaded first, just to make sure I'm not busting through the threads. I would recommend the lowest setting. go. All right. All that's left is to take one of the new rubber plugs, shove that down on in there, and then you take the new, I guess this is just a threaded plug, and that seats on top of the rubber plug. But I'm not going to do this right now because I don't have a nitrogen tank on me, and the last step is to recharge that with nitrogen. So I'm just going to thread this guy in here to keep crap out, like that, just finger tight, and that's it.